we're going to talk about this. We touched on this contact tracing a little bit on the call. We're going to talk a little bit more about this Google and Apple partnership. I think the goal is to have it released in early May, have some APIs, which are basically create a system that governments can use to help with this contact tracing thing. So they're going to release that stuff, and I'm gonna put up a couple photos of it because I think this is really interesting. And I'm gonna put up this photo of it. So here's the official, and just a quick word on. So if you're looking at your screen right now, you can see there's two slides I'm going to show you. So I think a lot of the times when something comes out, it always blows my mind when a company will release a press release or a blog post, and then let's say it'll be fucking 2 paragraphs or 3 paragraphs and they'll link to some things, but then an analysis of it is even longer than it, and it's just talking about all this stuff. So that was the case with this when they announced this, when Apple and Google both jointly announced their plans to help with contact tracing. Just to be clear, contact tracing is you're determining who you've been in contact with, then maybe you got it from them, or they maybe need to go get tested because you have been found positive of COVID-19, and now they should go get tested as a safety precaution. So anyway, so you'll see these press releases or these blog posts, and then you see all this analysis on it that's even longer than the original content, the original post from the source. So I always encourage people to look at what is the company itself saying. What is it they're saying they're going to do? So they released some really helpful, just general information. So we're going to walk through this. So here we go. So Alice and Bob meet each other for the first time and have a 10-minute conversation. Oh, by the way, I should preface this with this would be software that's running on your phone. It's using Bluetooth Low Energy to detect which devices are near you. So that's the outlook for what this contact tracing system does. So here's an example, and I'm going to walk you through it. Alice and Bob meet each other for the first time and have a 10-minute conversation. Okay, their phones exchange anonymous identifier beacons. Then Bob is found positively diagnosed for COVID-19 and enters the test result in an app from a public health authority. Then, with Bob's consent, his phone uploads the last 14 days of keys for his broadcast beacons to the cloud. So those broadcast beacons that Bob's phone was emitting to other devices, they were changing every day. He says he's been found positive of COVID-19. He uploads that data using the app. So here's the second part of this. Alice continues. Remember, Alice and Bob met. We don't know why they met. They're both married though, so we're a little uncertain about why they were on that park bench, but we'll discuss that later. Maybe put something in the show notes about that. But Alice continues her day unaware that she had been near a potentially contagious person. Okay, so Alice's phone periodically downloads the broadcast beacon keys of everyone who has tested positive for COVID-19 in her region. A match is found with Bob's anonymous identifier beacons. So her device has a list of the beacons it's been nearby. She determines that beacon has been tested positive. So then Alice will see a notification. She doesn't know who this person was. That's important. She doesn't know who this person was. She just knows that she was near someone at some point who has now been tested, I think within the last 14 days, who's now been tested positive. So Alice's phone receives a notification with the information about what to do next. So from a high level, that's what we're talking about here. So I'm going to go ahead and just go back to the regular webcam here. So it's just my beautiful face here. Okay, so a couple things about this. So there is this guy named Moxie Marlinspike. He works on, and we've talked about this app before. He works for Open Whisper Systems on the Signal app, which is an end-to-end encrypted messaging app. It's the best out there, bar none. He had some interesting takes on this, interesting questions about how it's going to work. And again, Google and Apple are going to release APIs. An API is just something that allows an app to it allows an app running on your phone to get extra functionality, so that Apple and Google will not be developing these apps, right? They will be developed by governments or public health institutions. They will simply use Google and Apple's technology, right? So this data is not going to Google and Apple. Let's be clear about that. So let's talk about the caveats of what the Fook, this guy Moxie thinks. I think he's got some really interesting questions. So your proximity IDs have changed, but once you upload them all, they become linkable. So my proximity ID that changes all the time, that is giving it out to other devices to let them know I was near them, that is changing all the time. But as soon as I become tested positive, boom, I upload them to the public health system, whatever it may be, and then then they're all linked. So then it's each one of those, they know it's me. Now, so the published keys are 16 bytes. We're going to get a little technical here, but bear with us. It's all chill. Published keys are 16 bytes, very small. Okay, that's not very big. One for each day. If moderate numbers of smartphone users are infected in any given week, that's hundreds of megabytes for all phones to download. So remember, Alice's phone downloaded all the possible beacons that were tested positive. That's possibly hundreds of megabytes of keys coming down to her phone. Hundreds of megabytes, that's a lot of, your phone has about hundreds of megabytes, that's almost a gigabyte, right? Your average phone, has 64 gigabytes or 128 28 gigabytes. That's not very much. So if you don't have that much free space, so that is an interesting technical critique of this. So here we go. Here's another issue with it. If anyone can anonymously blast up keys, they can create a situation where there's gigabytes of data for all devices in the world to retrieve and compute. There would likely need to be some kind of rate limiting on a combination of stable IDs, phone number, IP, etc., to prevent it. Right? So if anyone can just join the system and just publishing IDs and saying they've been infected and just pumping up a whole bunch of fake data, that is an interesting edge case. And he says, not to mention the prank aspect of being able to light up everyone you've been near devices with. You've been exposed to COVID without them knowing you're the culprit at any time, without some kind of pretty heavy manual ID result verification at the moment of reporting. And this is what Danielle was talking about that we just had on. She was saying, okay, well, she had concerns about the data. So this is where it starts getting interesting. If we don't know, if we can't tie those keys, the keys that change all the time that then tell other devices that you're near them, if we don't know whose those belong to, how are we supposed to determine that this user has already uploaded keys, they already have an account, et cetera, et cetera? So there are times there's edge cases here that need to absolutely be dealt with. So it's an interesting question. And we'll see how it goes out. So Google and Apple, they released joint blog posts on this. So they're identical on both their websites. Props to them for doing this. So they said early May is the release when these APIs will be available. Then they also said that they're going to be baking it into the operating system at a later, I forgot what the timeline was for that, but further out. So a more something that's just always in the device and you don't download it. So we talk about, what are going to be the scars that come out of this? Wounds heal, scars are there forever. So is this a scar? Is it standard now that Android and Apple devices, iOS devices, always have this contact tracing system built in so that when shit hits the fan, or if there's another pandemic, we can use this data and use this technology to contact trace. Now it's an interesting question. This may always be there. This might be the new normal. So that's an interesting. We'll see how that unfolds. We'll be covering on Shooting from the Hip, and we'll be riffing on that. So okay, here's the next thing. We're going to talk a little bit about cryptocurrency. We've been talking a lot about the markets, COVID. So let's have a little bit of fun with some cryptocurrency here. So I talk a lot about a decent amount about cryptocurrency, not lately, but my thing with it, just generally just get you caught up. I think the price is the least interesting thing about cryptocurrency. Oh, the price of Bitcoin 6,000, price of Bitcoin 7,000, Ether, went up to 2,000, whatever. That's not what's interesting. What's interesting is the technology. What's interesting is the things you can do with it. Now, what you can do with cryptocurrency today that I think your average person would find helpful is I can send a US dollar anywhere in the world for a fee of about 2 cents. Okay, I can send $1 billion across border for a fee of 2 cents. Now, this is stable. This is using stable coins, right? So the value of Bitcoin changes. I send you one Bitcoin, it could be worth 5,000 when I send it to you and 3,000 by the time it gets to you. There's now stable coins on most of them. There's a bunch of different types of a bunch of different stable coins, but a lot of them are on the Ethereum blockchain, and they are tied to the US dollar. That means you can always sell them on an exchange for exactly $1 US. Now, they might fluctuate a little bit by a few cents, but generally their value is stable. So I think that's one of the very interesting use cases of cryptocurrency.